بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب يسر يا كريم توكلت على الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Welcome everyone and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to our ninth session with Purification of the Heart as we look at ways of purifying our hearts, spiritually speaking, and taking this as an opportunity, through during the times we live through, to take stock of what really is important, what is our priorities, and how we can benefit from our time by doing what we can to become better people, inshallah, so that hopefully when life's new normal allow us to kind of return to some sort of a normalcy, whatever it may look like. We are better people, and we are hopefully the nucleus unit for better communities, inshallah. Today we have three diseases of the heart that we will look at: blameworthy modesty, and the other two are, I believe, Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Rasulillah, blameworthy modesty, fantasizing, and finally fear of poverty. If we start with the blameworthy modesty, let's read the poetry. Like I said last time, the reason this is an explanation of a poetry is that scholars of the past would put actually their teachings in lines of poetry that can easily be memorized, sang by people, memorized by young kids, and they become almost like a popular culture. Like today's songs that kids cannot get out of their heads. These were also kind of songs that people would definitely, sing and memorize, but instead of having foulness and things that are inappropriate, they had teachings that were extremely important for people's lives. So the lines here say, as for blameworthy modesty, it is that which prevents one from denouncing the condemnable, or from asking a question concerning a matter relating to religion and the like. For this reason, it is considered a harmful quality. As for noble modesty, such as the chosen one, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, behavior, the night he married Zainab, when he fed his company to their full from his wedding feast, and they all left except for three, they lingered, and yet he did not request that they leave. Such modesty is a most excellent virtue. Had modesty been a person, it would have been a righteous one, and would do nothing but good in whatever it did. أما الحياء الذميم فالمانع من تغيير منكر أو السؤال عن أمر من الدين ونحو ذلك، فهو الذي عد من المهالك. أما حياء كرم كما جرى للمصطفى إذ زينبا تقمر، وأشبع القوم من الوليمة وخرجوا عنه سوى ثلاثة، لبوا فلم يأمر بالانطلاق، فهو من محاسن الأخلاق. لو كان رجلا كان رجلا صالحا ولا يجيء إلا بخير رائحة. In general, modesty is something praised in Islam and is actually considered virtuous. We've talked about modesty before, and we've talked about shame and the idea that how shame can prevent us, and especially if we instill it in the right way in kids from a young age, it can prevent people from doing that which is wrong. Now, what is blameworthy is modesty that prevents one from denouncing what clearly should be denounced. الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر. Such as tyranny or corruption. One cannot see tyranny or corruption or injustice happening and say, because I'm modest, because I'm shy, I'm not going to speak out against injustice. That is blameworthy modesty that's actually not encouraged at all. This form of modesty results in what we call meekness at a time when one needs to be forthright and courageous, um, um, and courageous, something condemnable, what we call makruh, munkar, عفوا, not makruh, munkar, um, is condemnable regardless of the status of the person who is engaged in it, whether he or she is a close relative or a person of status, wealth, or authority. So we cannot remain silent because of our modesty, because the person who has done the wrong thing that should be condemnable, uh, kind of, uh, is a relative to us, or someone that has authority, or someone has money, or someone has status. We need to speak up. We need to say what is wrong, what is right. And so, if our modesty prevent us from doing that, this is a blameworthy modesty. There must be agreement, however, among scholars on what is condemnable. We cannot just, for example, declare decisively that something is considered condemnable if there is a difference of opinion about it among the scholars. And that's why it's very dangerous for people who are not experts in the field of religion and the science of religion to do the amr bil ma'ruf and nahi an al munkar, to enjoin what's right and condemn what is considered condemnable, because then they might go around and tell people they can't do this or they can do that, and the reality is totally opposite to it. That's why al-amr bil ma'ruf and al-nahy an al-munkar must be reserved for people of knowledge, but not just knowledge, people who are trained, and not just trained, but people who are authorized to do that. Otherwise, it becomes we live in a chaotic world where you just simply go to the masjid and see everyone is an expert in religion and everyone is telling everyone what to do and what not to do. They refrain from such condemnation not because of modesty, but because of their extensive knowledge and scholarship. I mean, scholars knowledgeable of juristic differences rarely condemn others. Yani, if you find a scholar, a true scholar, a true knowledgeable person who have studied extensively, they will rarely find something, you will rarely find them standing somewhere and telling people, do this, don't do that, what you're doing is haram, what you're doing is wrong. Why? Because their knowledge is vast. And once their knowledge is vast, they can see what we can't see and see the differences among the scholars and be aware of them as though they have this encyclopedic knowledge. And as a result, they don't just go around and condemn things and condemn people. Someone who does not have the knowledge, on the other hand, you will find them very quick and easily and readily going around and condemning people and condemning practices and things as haram, or deeming them as bad or wrong or this or that. Unfortunately, too many people today are doing that, swift to condemn, which creates another disease, what we call the self-righteousness. There's a joke about someone who walked into a masjid and um, they said, where's the imam? And everyone raised their hand except for the imam, because the imam knows, I'm not saying this about myself, but in general, when someone has knowledge, they know that, you gotta be, um, modest. And you have to know that however much, the more you know, that you don't know. But someone who only know a little, they don't have vast knowledge, spiritual knowledge specifically. They think that they know everything. They are fooled. They have self-righteousness, and therefore they are ready to answer questions. They are ready to condemn people. They are ready to declare self-righteousness as though they are better. And another joke I heard from actually someone dear to my heart. He said that there were two people sitting in a masjid. Again, laity, and they don't have much knowledge, but they are really quick and ready to condemn everything. They kept saying, "Oh, the world we're living in is bad. The only place that is good, that is righteous, is this country we live in." And then they said, well, even the country we're living in is bad. Actually, the other one is saying to him, everything is wrong and people have no deen and no fear in their hearts anymore. The only actually good place that is left is the city or the state we are living in. And the other person said, you know what? I think you're right. I think that even the state we're living in is really horrible state, and people are bad and they don't have religion and deen in their hearts anymore. I think that the only good place we live in is the city. And then the other one goes even farther and says, you're right. I think that even I can go as far and say that the only good place and good people left on this earth is our neighborhood. And they keep going, from the neighborhood to the masjid, and from the masjid to only few people, and then they start saying, I think you're right. Even you are is a horrible person, and you don't have much religion as much as I am, and this idea of self-righteousness, and it comes from lack of deen and lack of knowledge. Now, at issue here is blameworthy modesty that results in what we call like timid failure to denounce what unequivocally deserves denouncement, and to ask about important matters from those who know. Blame the blameworthy modesty can actually make people miss on a lot of knowledge, because simply they cannot have the courage to ask a question about a matter of their deen that is very important. And I'm reminded here with the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, in which Sayyidah Aisha says the best women were the women of the Ansar, or the women of Medina, because modesty did not prevent them from learning religion. The best women were the women of the Ansar, or the women of Medina, because modesty did not prevent them from learning the religion. It's amazing hadith, and it makes me so in love with the women of Ansar, the women of Medina at the time of the Prophet, because as the migrants came from Mecca, Mecca was a much more rigid, much more kind of conservative society, even before Islam, culturally. And that's another point I want to make sure that we consider, is that in many cases our modesty, that blameworthy modesty, does not stem from our religious sentiments. It stems from cultural conservativeness. That because of the culture, a woman cannot speak. Because of the culture, a little kid cannot ask a question. Because of the culture, you don't do this, you don't do that. And what happens? One of the biggest dangers of this blameworthy modesty is that people don't ask questions, they don't learn, and therefore they don't grow in their spirituality and their deen. And I see men in their 30s, women in their 40s, they lack the knowledge of the simplest things in their faith, as simple as making wudu, as simple as doing ightisal, taking a ritual shower when one is in a state of ritual impurity. These things are extremely dangerous, and because they are little and trivial, but they can be big in value. If you don't know how to make wudu correctly, your prayer is not valid. If you don't know how to do ightisal correctly, you cannot read Quran or touch the Quran or things like this. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that, as Sayyidah Aisha said, that their modesty was not blameworthy modesty. It was not fake modesty. It was actual modesty, and therefore it did not prevent them, the women of Ansar, from asking questions about and learning about the religion. And there was a woman that once came up to the Prophet ﷺ asking in a specific question about menstruation, and the Prophet answered her like, but the woman persisted in asking for more details and more details, and getting into like almost like asking more details that for many people they would not be comfortable not asking. No, they would not be comfortable listening to, even if they are like passing by. And the Prophet then asked Aisha radiallahu anha, Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha ardaha, to show the woman what he meant, to kind of demonstrate or like give her some, a more in-depth explanation, for it was like a bit awkward for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some women would even send like a cloth used for their ministerial protection. I mean, right now I'm talking about this, and I'm sure some people might be listening to this and be like, oh my God, like I can't listen to this. This is so embarrassing, or like this is so It's a private matter. I understand, but that's the differentiation between a blameworthy modesty and an actual modesty, and a true and praiseworthy modesty. A blameworthy modesty is one that will not allow you to learn about something very important to your deen and essential and foundational to your deen, such as tahara and cleanliness and purity. So some women would used to send a cloth that was used for their menstrual protection to like seek out with certainty what constitutes the beginning and the end of their cycle, which determines whether or not certain rites of worship may be resumed. Like it's about their prayers, and they took that very seriously. It's about fasting in Ramadan, and they took that very seriously. It's about being able to come to the masjid, and they took that very seriously. It's about reading the Quran, they took that very seriously, and so on and so forth. And most women would not feel comfortable with that, but the modesty of these women did not prevent them from seeking out knowledge about their religious affairs. And that's extremely, extremely important. Again, because nowadays we see that the matter has like flipped. We have cultural modesty that prevent people from their religion, but at the same time, these same women who are feeling culturally, modest and won't ask these questions, you see them going out, putting makeup on, or dressed in a specific way or acting in a specific way, and they have no issues whatsoever with that. So, like, you ask yourself, like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Your modesty is not preventing you from dressing in that way or speaking in that way or engaging in these kind of activities, but it's preventing you from asking a question about your your cycle, which will. And again, I'm not picking on women, by the way. It's just an example. I think there are the issue is men as well. Their pride, the fake pride that we instill in boys. Like we tell them, hey, don't cry. Boys don't cry, which is a total myth. No, boys do cry. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most manly of all the men that we know of, cried when his son passed away. So the fact that we tell our little kids don't cry, that's again cultural conservatism that has nothing to do with our religion. The fact that we don't do or show physical affection as parents, as men, to our children, again to specifically to our boys, that's another disaster. The Prophet ﷺ met with a man, a Bedouin man who came with a lot of kids, 8 or 9 kids, and he said, I never kiss my kids, I never hug my kids, I never show them physical affection. Again, culture conservatism that we see in the Arab and the Desi community, we see it in many communities, and they say, oh, I'm trying to raise a man, and we don't kiss, we don't hug, we don't show affection, and we tell our kids, our boys not to cry, to be tough it up, man it up, you're the man of the house. All of this is just toxic cultural baggage that we carry with us, and it has nothing to do with our faith. The Prophet ﷺ told that man, I have no place in my religion for someone who does not show mercy and love to their kids, and would hug or kiss their kids, even if they are boys, to show them that it's okay to be emotional, it's okay to be sensitive, it's okay to be vulnerable. And as a result, by the way, we have all of these men growing up with this toxic manhood that they cannot express love, they cannot express emotions or romance to their spouses, they cannot express vulnerability before their spouses, and that can create a big problem. So that again, that all is a blameworthy form of modesty. Now the Imam next speak on the modesty rooted in generosity and kindness, which is an acceptable kind and actually praiseworthy modesty. And he gives a great example of what happened when the Prophet ﷺ married Sayyida Zainab, al-Mu'mineen radiyallahu anha. The Prophet invited people for a wedding ceremony and a meal, a feast, and the guests came up and ate and then kind of overstayed, and the Prophet is getting married, and they kind of loved the Prophet, so they wanted to stay and hang out in his presence, eating food in his house. They were having fun, but much longer than what was necessary, so they stayed carrying on. In fact, everyone left except for three of them who remained late in the evening. Again, they loved the Prophet, they loved the company of the Prophet, and who knows, maybe they were even poor Sahaba who did not have much to eat, and for them that was such a chance to fill up their bellies with goodies and good food, in that feast. But also they stayed because of mainly their love to the Prophet. So the Prophet, being as generous as he was, stayed with them and kind of patiently waited for his guests to complete their visit and get up and go. The guests, however, like kind of paired with the Prophet because they loved his company. They did not feel any sense of like shame to get up and go. So that's a good example to look at both sides, the the blameworthy and the praiseworthy modesty. If they had praiseworthy modesty, they would have get up and go and like feel like embarrassed, but they didn't. So they kind of felt like it's all right to hang out. On the other side, the Prophet had good and praiseworthy modesty, where he did not feel right about just telling them, "Hey guys, it's time to get up and go." It would be almost like kicking them out. That's because of the Prophet had this beautiful, praiseworthy modesty. And at one point, the Prophet stood up and left the room and came back as though he's saying, it's time for you to go, you guys. I'm getting married, and I'm just like, you've stayed, you've overstayed, you ate and you hanged out with me, and it's been a long day, and it's time for me now, to go, for everyone to go to bed. But then hinting that as gently as possible, he didn't say anything even remotely close to get up and go, please leave my company, please leave my house, as they should depart. But still, they kind of stayed. He did this again and again until the verse from the Quran was actually revealed with regard to the etiquette of being in another person's home. And it was like almost an admonition that the Prophet himself was too shy and too generous to deliver, to kind of, to tell them that. And so the ayah says, believers, when you are invited, then enter. And when you have completed the meal, disperse. And don't linger on for conversation. This used to hurt the Prophet, but he shied away from telling you. But God is not shy of the truth. And that we find in the Quran. And this verse applies to visiting such people as like, scholars or people of high status, but also anyone, a sick person or this or that, whose obligations and time constraints are greater than others. They too may feel shy about cutting visits short when they are the hosts, or just pretty much anyone that you visit. The whole idea here is about modesty and how it can be praiseworthy at times. Now, the Prophet was too modest to tell his guests that it was time to leave. It was out of his generosity and benevolence that he did not address his guests this way. There are, of course, like people who would feel no, shame at all in asking their guests to leave, and they would do so in unambiguous terms. Imagine then how pure and wonderful was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the final messenger to be sent to humanity, a man of great authority from God Himself, but nevertheless too shy to request his guests to leave on his wedding night. And we see people nowadays kind of being very vulgar and thinking to themselves like this is just like you gotta say it as it is. I'm reminded of people who love Donald Trump and they say, "Oh, he says it as it is," and what's in his brain, in his mind, if there's anything at all, is on his tongue, and he says it as it is. And they think to themselves, this is not actually praiseworthy, and that's not good. Anyway, the Imam then said that had modesty been a man, that man would have been a righteous man whose actions would always be virtuous. I would like to, kind of add to the Imam and say, had modesty been a woman, that woman would also be righteous and always virtuous in her actions. So just to not be accused of being a sexist or anything like that. All right, now let's move on to the second disease of the heart, for us today, which is fantasizing. The Imam, will read the Arabic poetry in a second, and we'll see what fantasizing actually is in Arabic. But let's read the English one. He says, the heart's engagement in matters that don't concern it is only forbidden when it pertains to the prohibited, such as fantasizing about the beautiful qualities of a woman or dwelling on the faults of Muslims, even in their absence. والخوض فيما ليس يعني إنما يحرم حيث كان فيما حرم كالفكر في محاسن الأجانب وعورات المسلمين الغيب. Okay, now the next disease here is when one is engaged in matters that are of no concern to them. يعني من حسن إسلام المرء, the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام says in this beautiful, beautiful hadith, and simple as well, and I always teach it to little kids, that from the husn, or the beauty of من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه ما لا يعنيه. From the beauty and the excellence of Islam of someone is to leave that which does not concern them. And that's what fantasizing is about, that you think about things that do not concern you. For example, reflecting on things that are prohibited, haram. Like a lustful fantasizing about the beauty of a person one is not married to, or something like this. And in essence, what is forbidden to do is likewise forbidden as an object of like reflection or fantasy. Included in this is thinking about the weaknesses or faults of others, whether they are present or not. Prophet ﷺ said there is a tree in paradise reserved for one whose own faults preoccupied them from considering the faults of others. Imagine how our world, how much better our world would be if each one just concerned themselves with their own faults and their own issues that they need to work on. Instead, and sadly, unfortunately, we have people who all the time are occupied with the faults of other people. Spending time thinking or talking about other people's faults is foolishness and a waste of time. Because while we are concerned with others, yourself and your heart is also filled with things that you need to consider working on and fixing. Time is short. Life is fleeting. You only live once, as people say, and it's better invested in recognizing our own shortcomings and then working hard and consistently to eradicate them. And one must train themselves to actually do that. It's very easy for us to be sitting around, and saying, oh, did you see such and such person said this, did that? Not just you talk to other people, even to yourself. Like, oh my God, how can she say that? How can they do that? How can, oh, look at her kids. Oh, look at her spouse, or they look at that one kid and what they have done. Come on. Are you an angel? You have nothing to worry about other than people's issues and thinking about them and how bad they are and what they need to change and what they need to do in order for them to be better people. How about you? How about you? It's also prohibited, according to scholars, to reflect on the nature of God's essence. I know not many people do that. I mean, people have, less ridiculous things. I should not say less ridiculous things, but people have ridiculous things to think about. People no more think about something as glorious as God. I should have phrased that a little better. But what I meant is that the concerns that go in people's minds nowadays is not the nature of God and who God is and what God looks like. People nowadays sadly think about trivial matter that is awful. But even thinking about reflecting on the nature of God is prohibited, because what are you going to gain from this thinking, from that reflection? Absolutely nothing. And this does not mean that one shouldn't reflect on the beautiful attributes of God revealed in the Quran, Allah's mercy, Allah's might, Allah's power, all of that. Rather, trying to conceive of the very essence of God is kind of beyond our capability. And our conclusions will always be wrong. Like I remember I only had one question from the young people in this community who came to me and said, like, hey, sometimes I'm just thinking, and then like I can't help but think of God as like a person, you know. And that's something you teach, that as long as you haven't really believed in that, and you haven't really went on to think about this, like, and you are not preoccupied with this all the time, there is nothing wrong that for bad ideas that come to your mind, but you never actualize them and you never speak them. Now there are being wrong about something like this is not inconsequential. Some many religious communities before Islam and after, they indulged in this activity and have come up with like terribly uh, erroneous theologies regarding God, because not only has it been an idea in their brain, but they dwelt on it. They dwelt on it, and it became their own theology. And to think about God as a man or a person. And for this reason, we are told to like stay away from that kind of internal or external dialogue, and reflect instead on not what God is, but the qualities of God, as He revealed subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. The majesty of God, the knowledge of God, the power of God, the mercy of God, the gentleness of God. And that's why Allah placed all of these things in the world to be signs, ayat, of His qualities. And let that kind of reflection deepen our love for Allah and our desire to follow the commands of Allah, and therefore like prepare us for the hereafter, which is a momentous time when the veil now comes down and we will be able, inshallah, to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finally. That will be the reward that we will get for reflecting on the qualities and attributes of God, increasing our love and our following of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now moving along, going to another disease of the heart, and we say that this one is called الخوف من الفقر, or fear of poverty. And the lines of poetry say, fear of poverty originates in having a bad opinion of God the Exalted, and its cure is in having a good opinion, and knowing that what God possesses is never diminished in the least, and that what has been apportioned to you will reach you inevitably. One who uses his religion as a means of benefiting his worldly condition is a fanatic, a hypocrite in his transaction, and he ultimately shall be the one defrauded. وأصل خوف الفقر سوء الظن به تعالى والدواء في الحسن وعلم أن ما لديه لا يقل وأن ما ترزقه لك يصل وباذل الدين لإصلاح الدنا مداهن في بيعه قد غبنا وأصلها الطمع والرياء دواؤه عندي لها دواؤه عندي لها دواء وشمر إن أخذت في دواء عاقد الوية ذي الأدواء. All right, what does this all mean? The fear of poverty is counted now as one of the diseases of the heart, and in fact nowadays it's on the rise because a lot of people fear that they might be losing their livelihood and stuff like this because of the coronavirus and the economy and the recession and all of that. So people fear poverty. And so for that reason, that scholars have said that nurturing this fear is tantamount to harboring a negative opinion about God subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is really dangerous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Satan threatens you with poverty. Ash-shaytan يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء, and he commands you to immorality, but God promises you his forgiveness and bounty. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا. One of the shaitan's tactics is to keep people so occupied with the fear of losing their wealth, and as a result, they end up desperately clinging to their money and depriving the needy and themselves of the goodness of giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we look at our world, we have uh, numbers of people who are hungry and in poverty is skyrocketing. And sadly, there is a small percentage of people who own most of the wealth in the world, and because of their bad opinion of God, they cling so much to their wealth, they don't want to share it with others. And I know some people will say, well, they worked very hard for it, why don't they get to keep it and everyone work like no. Let's be real and honest. We have a capitalist society and world that we live in, and it's almost like a jungle out there. People who become extremely wealthy in the sense they have more money than not only what they need, but more money that they will ever be able to spend in 100 lifetime of their life. There's a great video on YouTube that tries to explain the wealth, I believe, of Elon Musk or something like this, and they use rice to show you like how much oh no, the guy that owns Amazon. Anyway, the point is, what I'm trying to say is that there is something that makes us not only amass more than what we need, but we cling so much to it that we don't give, and we don't share with others. And so the point I'm trying to say here, that this is one of the tactics of the shaitan, that it makes us so occupied with the fear of losing our wealth, and we end up keeping it to ourselves and not sharing it with others. Now, if you have wealth and you give your due right, your zakah, your sadaqah, that's you are not meant with that. But what is meant with this is people who amass and they don't give and they don't share. And a person under the spell of this irrational fear is more vulnerable to transgress laws, religious and otherwise, even to the point of indulging in lewdness for the purpose of gaining profit and wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Razzaq. He is the provider, and He is the source of all wealth and comfort in life. And Allah has promised those who believe in Him and expand and spend on behalf of the indigent, they will, and the needy, they shall receive a far more valuable return than the measure of what they spend. Allah said, if you give, I give you double and tenfold. Wallahu yudha'ifu liman yasha. And God, multiply to whomever He wishes. And whoever fears God, He will make for him a way out. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And Allah will provide for them in a way they never expected. And whoever trusts in God, He is sufficient for him. Just trust in God, and Allah is sufficient. We see people who go to court with their spouses, where they go to court with their company and they try to sue the company or sue this or that workplace to get to get more money, or to go around their obligation to spend on their families. And there is a stipulation that Allah put in receiving this provision, and that is to have true taqwa, or awe and fear and mindfulness of God, and is nurturing of the condition that permits us to walk the earth with dignity. The fear of poverty, brothers and sisters, is an instrument of deception and common cause of misguidance among people. Mark Twain, an American humorist, once remarked, "Most of my problems I never actually encountered. most of my problem I never actually encountered. And that's what fear of poverty is like. You live your life afraid of poverty. You amass wealth more than you need and more than what is sufficient for you, and still you are living in a state of fear of poverty. And a person can grieve over a an amount of concerns and problems that we may never ever have to face. And these, phantom concerns can be controlling. They control our lives. They give us an anxiety. And a person who has wealth is constantly worried about their state and its potential loss, and they want to increase, and so on and so forth. Now, often wealthy people enjoy little peace of mind, and their lives are like rife with conflict. Again, I'm not saying that being wealthy is haram, and I'm not saying that being wealthy is bad, and I'm not saying that we should not encourage people to work hard to make a lot of money. As long as that's why Allah put zakah 2.5 and put sadaqah, you give to the poor and you give to the needy. If you do that, amass as much wealth as you need. And if you also make sure that you do not get engaged in like being over attached to your wealth. And as long as you are aware that death will come and set you apart with your wealth. And as long as you understand that your wealth per se will not save you on the day of judgment, but how you use it, how you treat it can save you on the day of judgment. There is a hadith that states an anxiety is half of aging, and the authenticity of this hadith may be disputed, but the meaning of it is true. And there is another hadith that states righteousness will lengthen your life, and that is a true hadith. That taqwa, if you have right al-birr and taqwa, and being good to your parents and being charitable to people, will actually lengthen your life. And it is said that many of the past civilizations, the ones that really remained to our day, were civilizations that actually had charitable and generous elements embedded in it and in its people. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made their history and their civilization grow and continue to exist. The place where I went to school in Cairo, Egypt, was a historical neighborhood, and one of the most notable kind of features of this neighborhood and that civilization that lasted for thousands of years, and not thousands, but maybe 1,000 plus years, is that they used to have what is known as sabil. This is something that we don't have here as Muslims, but nowadays, but actually the American culture has it. And I will tell you a little in just a second what a sabil is. A sabil is a place that is set up for perpetual charity for not just people but animals as well. Yes. Now, if you go to a park, a big park or something here, you will notice something. There's a water fountain now, and because of Corona, they are shut off. But you will also notice that the water fountain has a part in the bottom for dogs. That's charity. That's water for people to drink for free and for animals to drink for free. Now, you might think to yourself, hey, like, what's the point? No, big point. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, وَفِي كُلِّ كَبِدٍ رَطِبٍ صَدَقَةٍ, that in every living creature that you feed, that you give water, you are taking the reward of sadaqah. And the sadaqah lengthens your life. And if that is done in a collective manner in a society, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects the society. In downtown here in Cedar Rapids in the Noble district, there is a small fountain for dogs. Allah protects and bless that community that does something like this, that sets up a charity like this. You know what I mean? Allah lengthens your life by being righteous. And one interpretation of this hadith is that people who are righteous don't suffer an anxiety that tears down the body and mind, and therefore they live longer. Do people want to live long? It's not about how much money you have, it's about how righteous you are, how about much you give. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Fear and depression. Take these out, your life, they said that fear and depression and loneliness will shave up to 5 years out of your life expectancy. Our religion is not just words. Our religion is not just feel good. Our religion can be backed by true science, that if we truly practice it, if we truly live it, we will see actual results, not just on how we feel, but how we live. The people who do not have over attachment to this life and to their wealth, they are content to do good and to trust God. Imagine someone who has $100, they take 10 out of the 100, they give it to someone, knowing that, hey, I'm not departing away from that, I'm giving it to Allah as a loan. And Allah will multiply it for me, whether in this life or the after. Imagine the psyche of that person, how they feel inside their hearts. On the other hand, imagine someone who has $1,000 and they are debating, should I give the 10? Man, if I give the 10, then I don't have 1,000 anymore. I have $990. That's less than 1,000. Come on, someone else might give that have like 100,000. Let me keep that 1,000. I need it. If you have that kind of mentality, you are not content. You are not happy. You are afraid. You have an anxiety. You're anxious. And it's usually the irreligious who are in a state of turmoil. Their hearts never at ease. And Imam Maulud ties fear of poverty with a kindred illness, whose carrier is called in Arabic mudahin, or mudahin. The person who has that disease is called mudahin, and a person who uses his religion as a means of gaining worldly condition, whether wealth or position or status in their community, and that person is a hypocrite in their transaction. They are losing this transaction. They are selling their religion to gain this world, and you end up cheating. You end up like cheated in the most debased way. And so I think it suffices to end here. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefit us from these words. In fact, let me say one more thing before we end up here. The treatment for the love or fear of poverty, rather, is to actually have a good opinion of God. To have a good opinion of God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, I do not desire from people any provision, ما أريد منهم من رزق وما أريد أن يطعمون, nor do I want them to feed me. People who harbor good thoughts about their provider, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, deflect insidious whisperings about him and the subtle provocations that create irrational fear. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dominion is never diminished in the least when Allah gives. So have trust in Allah's generosity. Don't fear poverty. If you go to bed, know that in the morning Allah will provide for you. If you wake up, know that in the evening Allah will provide for you throughout the day. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you and will not leave you alone. And if someone is given more than another, you should not think of that as injustice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember last time when we spoke about the idea of hasad, envy? It comes from the fact that you look at someone and say, hey, why do they get that and I don't? Have a good opinion of Allah, have a good opinion of the people. When you have wholesome thoughts about God, these thoughts express themselves in one's contentment, rida, with what you have. And your provision is not just in terms of money. It can be in your kids. It can be in your spouse. it can be in your parents, it can be in your health. All of that is provision. And you should look at it with rida from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and about with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Raditu billah. Say to yourself, I'm happy with what Allah has provided for me. And I trust that Allah can provide for me more. And if Allah does, I'm thankful. And if Allah doesn't, I'm content with what I have. Don't stretch your eyes toward the assets of others. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-qana'atu kanzun la yafna. Contentment is a treasure that is never exhausted. And Allah told the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran, وَلَا تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ إِلَى مَا مَتَّعْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِّنْهُمْ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Don't extend your eyes beyond what you have and try to look at what others have and try to, say, why don't I have what they don't? With that, I say Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'na innaka antal 'alimul hakim. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا ودعاء مستجابا وعينا دامعة وقلبا خاشعا. O Allah, benefit us with what you have taught us. Teach us beneficial knowledge, and we seek refuge in you from any knowledge that is not beneficial to us in the matters of this life and matters of the afterlife. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us, to provide for us an accepted actions and a heard dua and a crying eye and a fearing heart. Ameen, ameen, ameen. I will be here for 5 more minutes if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, jazakumullah khair wa barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.